Welcome to The Vital Point. I'm your host, Jonathan Schecter. If you are interested in transformational work such as plant medicine, psychedelics, breath work, meditation, somatic practices, cold exposure, yoga, and more, then, my friends, you are in the right place. Welcome to The Vital Point, the podcast that is for practitioners as well as people new to transformational work looking curiously for more information and guidance. So, if you are new to this type of work, welcome. I'm your host, Jonathan Schecter. I am an integration coach and breathwork facilitator. I've also been meditating for about 20 years and do some mindfulness instruction as well. So, this podcast brings you leaders in the fields of transformational work, whether that's psychedelics and plant medicine work, breath work, or a myriad of other types of modalities. And my goal with this podcast is to not only introduce you to new modalities and practices, but help spark your curiosity to go out and actually practice them. So I hope you enjoy today's episode of the show. On this episode of the Vital Point podcast, I sit down with Fabian Rodriguez, known on Instagram as realization_nation. Really enjoyed this conversation. Fabian has this wonderful energy, and one of the themes that comes up on the podcast is of embodiment and being rather than doing. And I can really feel that in his energy. It's something that I'm working towards myself. And so Fabian shares his story about being called to work with plant medicine and how that's transformed his life. Now he's in his 9th year of taking people down to the Amazon to work with his maestros, teachers, with sacred plants, including ayahuasca. And share some really cool stories about that, and as well as his men's work with the Sacred Sons group, which is definitely needed in these times. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. The Vital Point podcast, podcast about all different kinds of transformational practices, breath work, plant medicines, meditation, mindset, basically anything that you would need if you're interested in transforming yourself and really want to bring forward leaders in the field, people that are doing the work themselves so that they can share their stories, their inspiration, and hopefully spark your curiosity as listeners to go and discover something new or, go a little bit deeper in your practice. And today my guest is Fabian Rodriguez. He's known on Instagram as Realization Nation, and followed him for quite a bit and was really grateful that he agreed to be on the podcast. So Fabian, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
So normally when I kind of open the episodes, sometimes the guests, it's easy to sort of describe them and what they do and who they are. Sometimes they're kind of niched in, and then there's other people that are definitely more multidimensional. They've got their hands in a lot of different passions and projects and whatnot. And to me, you kind of fit into that second category. So rather than me trying to sum up what you do, would you mind just telling a little bit about yourself, and if you had to describe yourself to somebody brand new, like what would you say about yourself?
Well, I like the part you said multidimensional, because it's always a tricky one when somebody asks me what I do.
Right.
Nonetheless, even family, they go, "So what do you do?" I'm like, "All right, how do I describe this?" And it's interesting because it's not something like like a resume where you put your job description. So it's really more of I would say like a life description of what I do. Ultimately, it being just that I'm doing the things that have sparked exactly that within me, a transformation, and been able to share it. So within those have been all types of different practices and modalities, from being an actual physical personal trainer to also guiding people on psychedelic journeys, and currently working in Peru. Been working there for about 8 years now, taking people with me every time I go. So it encompasses a lot of different hats I wear, I guess you could say, you know, and we'll cover more. I think it'll unravel as we go.
Yeah,
But
definitely. I think that's a good transition into that. So, like, a couple of the reasons that, I wanted to talk to you more are things that you post about. You mentioned taking people down to Peru for medicine journeys. And I also, you work with Sacred Sons doing men's work. And that's a beautiful group, a beautiful practice. And so, yeah, like, I really wanted to kind of get into both of those things with you because men's work, I think, is so important, especially within the transformation and the psychedelic space. Um, I find that for whatever reason, this type of work is very, it attracts the feminine energy quite easily. Whereas somewhat, it seems like the masculine is sometimes it's a little bit harder to get into. Maybe that's because we as men are kind of taught in our society to like not be in touch with our feelings and our vulnerability and walk it off, suck it up, be a man, all that kind of stuff. And so like I really appreciate the folks like you that are representing the masculine in the space and like really showing that it's okay to be vulnerable and to embrace this more whole bodied embodied form of the masculine and the feminine together. But I would love to just start off with like, how did you get involved in taking people down to Peru, to the jungles, to do this medicine work?
well, part of like what you were just saying about embodiment, really that encapsulates everything, and that's been my journey of embodying all these aspects that have helped me really heal parts of myself, and in doing that, been able to, I guess you could say, pay it forward with helping others, and really, it's been amazing because it's the more that I've come into this embodiment of who I am, uh, that's all I've had to do really. So there's nothing of reaching out to anybody. Just I, you know, me going to Peru, doing men's work has been work for myself, and in doing so, I've kind of put the invitation out to others, like, hey, well, this is working for me, and those that resonate with it, answer that call. And so Peru, it's been now, gosh, coming on about almost 9 years of traveling there and working with uh, some of the indigenous people I've worked with there for quite a while, and my maestro that become close with, and it started, like I said, about 9 years ago, and really it was a big moment of awakening when I had a big breakup from a fiance, and that really sent me into this questioning of who I am and what I'm doing here. Went into depression, went into the, you name it, the textbook. I was going into drinking and escaping, and and eventually I was researching, trying to find something of what could help me, and it's ayahuasca popped up in some form that I was looking at, and I remember even looking through at therapy, and somewhere in there I kind of just veered, and as the saying goes, like it calls you, and so I felt like this calling, and I'd never heard of it, and I looked at it, and I was amazed it answered a lot of the questions that were coming up for me, and but then then I was like, well, where do you find a medicine worker, a shaman? Where, how do you even find somebody in the jungles and nonetheless this medicine? And so that seemed a far off concept for me. And as like I said, as this medicine works, 2 days later, a friend contacts me saying, "Hey, I'm going to Peru on this with a group. Have you ever heard of this ayahuasca?" And I was like, "Hey, I'd like to join." I like it was the it just happened so synchronistically It
Yeah.
showed up, and I was like, sign me on, I'm coming with you. And from there, that was it. I felt like I had to come back. That first time, in ceremony, it felt like like they gave me just a couple minutes to be in a library and try to gather as much information, And
Mm.
so after that first experience, I was like, okay, I'd like to come back and spend a little more time in the library. And so I did. I returned within a year, and basically learned how to navigate through that space a little bit more each time, with working with my maestro, teaching, learning, watching, sitting in what's called dietas, so learning how they work with the medicines, and really humbling myself. It was a very humbling experience to learn something completely out of my my scope. And and so I got really close with my maestro, and he told me, he goes, hey, keep returning, keep learning, keep coming, and I'll teach you more and stay longer. And so I ended up just staying in the jungle for weeks at a time, and learning all the different plants that they had, and what from there, they you start learning the spirits of these plants, and they become your sacred allies, really, on your journey. And so it's really been amazing to not only work with them and learn, but also be a part of it, their whole community, and help them along the way in any way I can. And so it's been it's not just the medicine. When people come with me out there, it's not just to experience just ayahuasca. It's really the whole experience of being on the land, being off the grid, being away from all the things that we know, all our safeties, and observing, and just being a humble observer of how people live there also.
Yeah, that's so beautiful, and there's so much to unpack there. And I was writing notes
Mm.
as you were speaking, because there was so much that you were saying that was resonating with me and my own story, and things that I could relate to. One thing that I did want to like go into a little bit more is the dietas, because I think when ayahuasca in particular is becoming so much more prevalent in the social conversation in the mainstream. And I think that a lot of people, especially if they're sort of used to let's say the media narrative of like what psychedelics are, and what drugs are, like there's a certain idea that they have. And ayahuasca is like only one medicine, only one plant. It's really more about all the getting that relationship, like you mentioned, with the different plants, and dieting, and building that connection with different plants. So yeah, could you speak a little bit more about that, that process, and like how how do you decide which plant you're going to work with?
Yeah, as they say in the jungle, that it's really the work is doing the dietas. It's not about sitting with ayahuasca, and like you said, here in the Western culture, well, yes, people want to experience ayahuasca, but it's nonetheless, people coming from the Western civilization, Western society, when you get there, to sit with that plant is very powerful. It's a master plant. It's a master teacher plant. So to arrive and just jump into that is a lot. So it's
Yeah.
I recommend people to do the dietas beforehand, and even if they could do something prior, so we like a soft dieta prior to coming, where you start removing certain things, such as obviously alcohols, and no sex, and spices and oils from your diets. So these things put you in a space of reflection. I found that it worked a lot, where I could see where my attachment to even something as basic as oils and salts and certain foods, like, to let go, and to there is a part that I've learned in sitting with plants, that there is a you also have to give up something to get
Hmm.
something, and part of that is giving up those attachments, and the things that are connected to an older way of thinking, that you're trying to uh, come into a new way of approaching life, and you just can't come with the same baggage. And so with the dietas, the way it goes is originally, like I'll tell you the story of how originally ayahuasca was meant to be, how it was used back in the days was really somebody had an ailment, an issue, and they would come to a curandero, a vegetalista, um, which what we would call shaman here. But and so as almost like the doctor of the village, and they would sit with them in ceremony, and the maestro, the curandero would take the ayahuasca. So he would ingest it and be given the visions and the understanding through his connection with the wisdom of all the plants he's dieted with, which at that point they would be able to almost diagnose the patient, as they call them. They'd be able to diagnose them, and at that point go, you should work with this plant that's going to help cleanse your blood, work with this for your reproductive system, work with this for your gastric. So it's a pharmacy in the jungle. They have every, I mean, walking through there, they could point out, oh, this is to cure cancer, this is for eyes, this is to, it's amazing to learn that. And so at that point they would tell the person, like, to go on a dieta, and they would recommend 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, 3 months, up to a year of doing a strict dieta where they're going to remove a lot of things from their everyday life. And usually that would also entail sitting in the jungle on their own and a stripped down diet. And so when people are able to do that, they when they come, they sit with the maestro also, and this time now they sit with ayahuasca, and usually the maestro will know what plant for them to work with. And usually if somebody's coming from Western society, the first thing they're going to have you do is just go through a cleansing, just cleanse the body, cleanse the system. So some of the plants are going to be like mokura, aosacha, things that are just going to kind of cleanse the blood system, the gastric, the gut, and that can be challenging in itself. And these are not psychoactive plants, so these are just doing a cleansing to begin with, and then they move to maybe smaller plants, to floral plants, to bring in dream work, to bring in songs, to bring in opening of hearts. One that's popular is Bobinsana. They'll start working with Bobinsana, more of a feminine energy, a soft way to start entering into this realm of learning these plant spirits. And which at that point you start, if you're doing dietas consistently, then you move up to stronger plants. Sometimes might be a psychoactive plant, dream work plants, and then ultimately moving to what's called palos fuertes, which are trees, or ancient trees. So drinking some of the prepared resin from the trees, and after, I mean, some of these curanderos have accrued, years of dietas, hundreds and hundreds of sitting with plants, different plants. So they have a library of wisdom of what somebody needs when they come seeking healing. So that's really how originally it was meant to be, and so with, like you said, with the popularity of it coming, and by all means, ayahuasca still is an amazing teacher. It's going to show so much to somebody,
Right.
because they're going to sit there. But also, like, I remember when I used to observe them, they would the maestro, they would drink a full cup and they'd sit there focused, while other people would start rolling around and making noises. And as they said, they go, the more you've done dietas, the more that you could concentrate and really focus and commune with the spirit of ayahuasca. And really get the downloads, really get the understanding of what's coming through, the wisdom of the plant, versus, I don't know, cleansing out just your bad diet from eating here in the Western side,
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like what you're saying is a different way of describing what, sort of has become referred to as integration, right? Like, number
Mm-hmm.
one, we're making space for this new energy. or the connection with the plants to actually root and like become integrated with yourself. You're not just having this experience and then going back to your normal life. So that what you mentioned is like, even before you go and sit with the medicine, it's looking at what are the things that are like maybe keeping me from really being integrated with who I want to be when I'm, coming into to my dieta and my plant experience. And then, leaving that space that has been created that the medicine can then fill, and then taking that back into your life when you leave the jungle. And there's something that's so magical about that, like not only like you mentioned the foods and the oils, and you mentioned sex, but also like I feel like there's an element of being able to take inventory of everything that you're doing. Like how much time am I spending scrolling on Instagram, or watching something that really isn't like that healthy for me in my mind and my soul. What are these ways, what am I consuming? Not only food and liquid and drugs, but like also the media. Who are the people that I'm spending time with? Like what's the energy that I'm consuming? And like you said, like giving up those things, like not only does it create that space, but it also like really shows you in this very visceral way of like, oh wow, these are the things that I've become sort of dependent on, or like these are my habits. And then the plants can come in and just like, because you've created that space, there's room for that growth and new growth. It's just like in a garden, right? You would have to get rid of the roots and the weeds and whatnot, so that you can plant new plants and have new flowers and whatever you're growing actually take root.
Yeah, it's exactly that, because I remember this one master I worked with. He goes, once you've sat with these plants, he's like, it's like a little seed inside of you. He goes, if you cultivate the space for it, it'll keep growing and keep expanding, keep teaching you. And that's one thing, like you're touching on integration. That's obviously the most important aspect of this, of how you're going to bring in that wisdom that you've had the opportunity to see and hear and feel. All how are you going to apply it into your life? And so because the way I've looked at it with all these different medicines and modalities in life, whether it be breath work or it be plant medicines, or it's really, it opens the portal for the opportunity for you to step into what you're calling in. It doesn't just heal you. A lot of people have the concept that they're going to go and just be healed of whatever it is and get rid of something. And yes, there is an aspect of that, but you also have to do the work. And I look at these plants and all these modalities really as they're there to support you. They're there to support you. They're not going to grab you by the hand and do the work for you. And by you cultivating the space within yourself, around yourself, just like you said, not just what you're feeding yourself, but what are you feeding, that you're watching, listening to, what's around you, what's feeding your soul or not. And so once you do have that experience and people come back, you've changed, you've made a big change, and now you got to make the adjustments accordingly to cultivate that garden.
Yeah. I love the analogy that you used of the library, because not only is it just a cool visual, but like it really speaks to how much information and is out there that we're just completely like cut off from, unless we have access to these teachers and these plants. And I haven't been to the Amazon yet, but I love that visual of like just this huge pharmacy library, and almost like a technology that is so much more advanced than we would give it credit for initially. Like I remember the first time sitting in ceremony myself, like one of the things that I really didn't understand and was like very skeptical about were the Icaros. And like I was like, okay, it makes sense to me that I could drink this brew and have something happen. but like, how is this song going to heal me? Like, that just seems like it doesn't make sense to me. And all you need is that experience to go like, okay, wow, like I don't, there's no doubt anymore. Like this is really happening. You
Hmm.
know, it's an experiential thing. But the to me, there's such a technology almost in that, and the wisdom of these plants that all of a sudden you can be connected through, that is almost miraculous, I think, like the first time. And it's just such a beautiful way that you described it. The other thing that really like stuck out about what you were saying is that you weren't thinking or like really having to consciously make decisions. It sounded like you were like just open and going in the direction that your heart was pulling you in, and like your spirit was taking you in, that led you back to the jungle, that led you to the jungle in the first place. I mean, that's an incredible story of like 2 days later, you know, your friend shows up and says, hey, this is what I'm doing. And you know, just being open to those synchronicities and serendipities of life that are really all around us all the time. Just like the power of these plants are around us all the time, and we're just not really paying attention to them. So I really appreciate you sharing all that.
Yeah, it's really, once you do open yourself to whatever it is that you're seeking, those things are, universe will align those things for you.
Mm.
And so the minute that you start seeking, as the saying goes, what you seek is seeking you, that really resonated with me, because the moment that I did ask the questions, those answers started arriving. And we call those synchronicities and or coincidences, and I've learned to even not be shocked by them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is the way that the universe works, and it makes sense to me that what I ask for, and what I my perception and what I focus on is what becomes available to me. And so in this journey with plants, um, they're there waiting for you to show you that. And here in the Western side, same thing. Even if you go to nature and you listen, you get an understanding, something much different than if you were not paying attention. And with culture right now, a lot of people don't have that connection, and that's why I find such a deep. Well, once I'm there in the jungle and somebody comes with me and they're off the grid, a lot of those distractions have been removed. Just
Mm.
alone, just the basic everyday life, and so you're left there to your own vices of understanding, of trying to, you start observing, you become an observer again. And so there's so much to learn from, speaking about technologies, there's something that I found very teaching and interesting in reflecting in just even the insects, the insects in the
Mm.
jungle, the sounds of the animals, the sounds at night during a ceremony. All these things, like there's actual intelligence and consciousness and wisdom being taught. Now, if another analogy I like to use is, like, let's say a website. I see a website, I just see what it is. Now, somebody who knows the coding looks at it and they understand what's
Mm.
making the website work. And so when I'm out there, I can understand that. I can see behind that veil and see, oh, the workings, the dynamics behind life, behind death, of why we are the way we are, why my mind is the way it is, why. And so I have this. It's a powerful reflection to actually the nature to reflect. As they say, Pachamama, and you reflect on all that there is there. And you can just sit there
Yeah.
by the river and have an understanding of yourself with nothing else.
Mm. I love that. And yeah, it's you know, I live in Tucson, and it's one of the great pleasures of where I live that, you know, unlike Phoenix, for instance, like where they've tried to kind of pave over the desert and create like a city, there's so much of Tucson that's like you're in the desert,
Mm-hmm.
like you're in nature to a certain extent. You know, there's javelinas and hawks and different animals and coyotes that are just kind of running through neighborhoods because you're in their territory, not the
Yeah.
opposite. And it's such a wonderful way to integrate, especially, you know, different medicine experiences, like you said, to just go out into the nature and be quiet and listen. And like I've had those experiences, like where the saguaros start to talk to me, and you know,
Hmm.
just sitting with them and communing and feeling like, wow, like I'm moving so fast. There's so much patience that these grandfathers have to teach me. You know, that my whole life is a blink of an eye to them. You know, like I must be moving so quickly, and like, can I sit and try to learn something from them about being patient and just being a part of this community? You know, because usually when you see swallows out in the desert, right, there's
Hmm.
tons of them. There might be hundreds of them surrounding you, and there's so much in our environment and in nature that's there to teach us if we're open and we're listening, like you're saying. It's just just resonates so much with everything that you're saying, brother.
Yeah, and also something that personally I that comes through when I'm in a space of being in nature, that I'm no greater than, I'm no less than. I'm equal
Mm.
to everything around me, from the insects to the plants to the animals. That I can observe myself becoming part of the fabric of it all. And so at that point,
Mm.
like, you lose a lot of your uh, a lot of the labels, a lot of what you perceive yourself to be,
Yeah.
and to just be. Or as one maestro once told me, he asked me what I thought the the jaguar thought of itself to be. He's like, once you're on the medicine, he goes, you'll understand what the jaguar understands, and that didn't make sense. And he's like, what do you think the jaguar thinks he is? And so I sat there thinking, like, I don't know, well, king of the jungle, powerful cat, powerful. And he was like, no, he's not thinking. He's just being. He's
Mm.
completely being in nature, and and that really sank in with me, because there was moments where I would find myself completely not Fabian, not this shell and what I perceive myself to be, but I found myself to be in connection with all.
Mm.
And at that point, I felt myself literally accepted by the jungle. Like, okay, you're welcome to come in here.
Wow, that's beautiful. I feel like we could keep talking about this topic for a while, but I did want to kind of pivot a little bit to
Yeah,
your work with Sacred Sons, and like how did you get involved with men's work and kind of what you're doing now with them?
yeah. It's been now about 3 years working with Sacred Sons, and it's been amazing. It's been amazing to connect with men that are also on very similar path as myself, and nonetheless a lot of also medicine brothers that have actually sat with medicine. So there was some a connection there. But to start was really through myself and another brother named Albert, who is one of the three co-founders of Sacred Sons. We had we would do small groups and just kind of be like, hey, let's see if we could get a bunch of guys to come over, and I'll do the sound, I'll do the sound bath, and he's like, we'll lead a talk and kind of just see where everybody's at. Let's be like, hey, what's up in your life? Because at that point we weren't drinking or partying, and so we were like, all right, well, we want to gather and have a little potluck, and let's just, and we would literally write out a couple questions, leading questions, and all of us would have turns to share on it. And in doing so, we would notice like one question would take 30 minutes each guy. So there was a lot to talk about. I was like, wow, every guy, like, what was going to be an hour, 2 hour session turned into just all of us hanging out all night sharing. And so we found that we're like, okay. And guys were like, hey, when's the next one? And so while we were doing that, there was the other two brothers that were co-founders, Jason Mack and Adam, that were also doing their own work in separate groups. Jason was working with the Mankind Project, and Adam was working with somebody else. And through social media, they kind of ended up following each other and going like, hey, well, why don't we come together and do something a little bit larger? And so we had the first Sacred Sons gathering in Joshua Tree, and really it's been now that all the co-founders that are still with us, that we all came and we're like, all right, well, it's 8 of us, so what are we going to do? So we're just going to sit around, talk and gaze and cry and and laugh a lot, but it's been such a powerful medicine to have, to be able to reflect with other men openly, the our struggles. And I show up and sometimes I'm like, I don't know, I even sometimes feel like, hey, maybe I'm not worthy of being here, or I don't need to be here. And hearing somebody else share something opens up something within me and activates something else. And not only one doing one's work, showing up and sharing something, whatever, in whatever way you show up, all of you is accepted, as we always say. And but also holding space for others. People sometimes never held space, and to actually witness a brother going through something without any judgment, just going like, hey, I get it, I've been there. We see ourselves all not just as humans there, like we're having the human experience, but also as souls going through this experience. And
Yeah.
so it's gotten, within the past 3 years, really, now it's gotten pretty fine tuned to like the offerings that we have and the people that have shown up, the facilitators that are bringing their gifts. And now it's amazing. Everybody that showed up brought their best, from the graphic artist guy to the photographer to the yoga teacher to sound. Everybody has shown up with their gifts to the highest.
Yeah, I love that. And that kind of circles back to something that you said at the top of our conversation about, turning the challenges in your life, like you mentioned, that breakup that, you took you into this dark place, but then alchemizing that struggle and that challenge or that darkness, not only into like your own medicine, but something that you can use to be an inspiration and help for other people. And you don't really even have to work at it. It's just like you just have to be you and do your own work and show up and embody, just I think it's Gandhi, right? Like be the change you want to see in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
and that creates this beautiful web of connectivity. And yeah, I love that. It's just it's such a powerful way to be and to embody the work that you're doing. And yeah, it's my hat's off to you, brother. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. It's really, that's what we're here to do. When somebody's like, what's my purpose? I'm going to tell you guys, when somebody asks, what's my purpose? Like for me, my purpose has been to be of service,
Hmm.
to be, and in doing so, the next question was like, well, how do I do that? And at that point is diving into what my passions are, of what I like to do, and sharing that. And and in doing so, that helps somebody else to tap into what they want to do. Well, it wouldn't be fun doing all this just for myself. It wouldn't be
Yeah.
fun having a men's group if it's just myself. but but sharing it, and in doing so, is really, you're just being yourself. That's what you're here to do. It's not a very complicated thing. I've learned over the years that we make it very complicated. What this
Yeah.
purpose, and why, what's the meaning of life, and this, and really, it's here to be yourself, to be the best self you can. Enjoy it, love it for everything, for all the ups and downs. I've even learned to rephrase a lot of how I was doing my own self-talk of all these, you know, they're not challenges. They're all opportunities for me to step up. These are all
Yeah.
opportunities. Yes, we could go like, oh, the universe is testing me right now. I'm like, no, it's actually just giving you the opportunity that you've been asking for. It's like, well, here you go. This is what you've been asking for. And so taking those makes me be grounded in who I am, and helps me share. And with social media, obviously, this has been an amazing journey with with this technology to reach out just like this. And I see so many people joining us, and there's people that have joined on that have come to the jungle with us. And so I see them joining, and and that's exactly, the more authentic we could be with each other, the more that you're dropping your walls, I drop my walls, and vice versa. And next, we're like just being ourselves, and I could connect with people that much easier. Because I found when I would put a mask on, then somebody else would put a mask on,
Mm.
and we end up playing those roles. And so it's still a journey. I haven't figured myself out all. I don't think I ever will. That's kind of the ever evolving part of myself, that I'm constantly figuring something out, and it's so much fun in doing this. That we say at Sacred Sons, like, be a lighthouse, so the boats that are out there in the rough seas could find their way, and they have to learn how to navigate. Don't jump in the oceans trying to save the boat, because you might get taken down. So
Mm.
I encourage everybody just to do that. Just be themselves the best they can, and don't be so hard on yourself.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it's all like you said, it's all in the framing, like when we go through that journey of like something that we thought was a challenge or we felt like a victim, and all of a sudden you like can see the bigger picture of like where this led you, or like the things that it taught you, maybe the people that it brought you to, right? Because if you hadn't gone through those experiences in the exact same way that you did, you wouldn't be exactly where you are, with the people around you that you in the community that you've built. um like what a blessing that is, and like just how beautiful, like what a beautiful part of life that is, and I love, just the community that you're building, because, I think there's like a saying, right? Like you're the sum of the people closest to you around you. So like being in community, being so close with brothers that are so aligned with you spiritually and energetically, it just strengthens that energy for everyone, and it helps the new people coming in for the first time, like you're saying, that maybe they're the boats that are out in that rocky sea trying to find that light. And all of a sudden it's like, wow, voila, here I am. Like I'm in the right place. And I can definitely like relate to that myself. And yeah, it's wonderful. It's a wonderful blessing of social media, to be able to connect to people like that. I think I probably came upon your account because of Tim Morrison coming and working with Sacred Sons, and then like kind of going down that rabbit hole of like, oh, what's this men's work? Like this is cool, and like wanting to learn more about it, and kind of being curious. So like I really appreciate what you're doing, and just maybe not what you're doing, but who you're being, right? Like you're
Yeah,
not really
yeah,
doing anything, you're just being yourself, and like you said, just embodying that vision and that energy. So I definitely appreciate it.
yeah. Thank you. And it's really like, if you can find community, it does help to reflect with others, and to find mentors, and and learn from elders, and find people that are, I could find like-minded people easily, but to find like-hearted people is a little bit different. So find like-hearted
Mm,
people.
I love that. Well, this has been great. I feel like we could go on for a lot longer, but I want to kind of respect your time as well. So tell our listeners like where they can learn more about you. I know you have a trip coming up, right, to the jungle?
Yeah, I'll be returning. I took a little break, and I've been feeling I'm ready to go back, and when I go back, I'd love to open invitation to people. And so April 1st to the 8th, I'll be going back. And if anybody's interested, to reach out, send me a message, or go to the website realizationnation.com. They can find more information there. You could register. Also, there's plenty of Sacred Sons gatherings, so any brothers that want to come out, there'll be some in San Diego, Arizona, and also Maui, and they can connect through sacredsons.com and see the events page there, or on their Instagram page, Sacred Sons also. And anybody who wants to send me a message, feel free. I'm open to anything if any help they need.
Yeah, definitely. I would definitely recommend everybody following Fabian. He's got an awesome account. Always find a lot of medicine and at least a laugh. Like you post some
Yeah.
great memes as well. And I really appreciate getting that, that insight into your life and you sharing that medicine with everyone. And thank you so much for being on the podcast. It's been great.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you for creating this container to share.
Yeah, I hope we can do it again sometime because I feel like we've only really scratched the surface.
Yeah, I'd like to.
Yeah, maybe after you come back, you could come on
Okay, yeah.
and share about your experience this time.
There we go. That'd be good, actually. I like that.
That would be awesome. Yeah, and thank you so much for everybody joining today on the Instagram Live. Like you definitely have a lot of familia out there, brother, and a lot of people supporting you.
I see them all. I love you guys all. I love everybody here.
Yeah, and if you're listening on the podcast platforms like Anchor, Spotify, Apple, go ahead and subscribe to the show. Go ahead and follow Fabian at realization_nation on Instagram. We'll also put a link to his website on the show page. And really just appreciate everybody joining today. The name of this podcast is The Vital Point, and like it was kind of my idea of like distilling like what is the essence of this transformational practice. I think what you touched on today that really stuck out to me is embodiment. Being in a state of being rather than like going out and really having to search, which is sort of like what's in your head. Would you agree that that's the vital point, or do you have maybe something more to say about that?
No, it really is that, it really is embodiment. It becomes, I mean, yes, there's work to do in all this, but then at the end of it, you also go, hey, there is no work to do. So that's the paradox of all this is everything is perfect the way it is. And so the vital point is just accepting that, just being that you're perfect as it is. And so I like that. Thanks for sharing what the name of it is.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you so much, Fabian. I'll definitely be looking forward to our next conversation, and good luck on your upcoming journey. Blessings for you, my brother.
Thank you. We'll talk when I'm back.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for joining the podcast, and see you next time on The Vital Point. We will have Adrian Jessic next Wednesday, co-founder of Morosco Forge Ice Baths, coming up. So looking forward to that conversation as well. Until then, take care, everyone. Thanks for checking out another episode of the podcast. I hope that you not only enjoyed it, but that you feel inspired to go and do some practice of your own. Whether that is something that is a part of your regular routine, like meditation or breath work, or trying something new, like taking an ice bath or starting a new mindset practice. Maybe you feel curious to something that you've been called to try, working with a new teacher, a new facilitator, or maybe even working with psychedelics or plant medicine in whatever way is safe and legal for you where you live. My hope is that you are curious and continue to expand your transformational practice, and that this podcast inspires you to continue doing that. As always, if you can follow or subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you're listening to it on, it definitely helps. And if you can leave a review, even just a few reviews really help to push the podcast up in the algorithm and help make it more visible to more people. And I'd love it if you shared it with your friends if you're finding it valuable or interesting. As always, follow me at Blue Magic Alchemy on Instagram, all one word. And if you're interested in learning more about breathwork, or you'd like support integrating or preparing for self-development and transformational practice, reach out to me at bluemagicalchemy@gmail.com or at Instagram to set up a discovery call for Instagram coaching. Until next time, thank you, be well, and keep practicing. That's the vital point.